Hey everyone, we will now start off with this session. Welcome to the ServiceDesk Plus Masterclass 2023. This is the episode, this is the second episode of season 2, and we'll be focusing on setting up condition-based automations for some of the critical ITSM practices. Now, in the previous episode, we discussed about building ticketing templates in ServiceDesk Plus and making them dynamic using field-informed rules. In this episode, we'll be seeing how we can go even further and automate various actions on the ticketing lifecycle, namely classification, prioritization, assignment, and how we can handle certain scenarios such as major incidents. I'm Siddharth. I'm a product expert with ServiceDesk Plus here at Manage Engine, and let us dive right in. Now, I'm also happy to share with you that you can share your experience in using ServiceDesk Plus on Gartner Peer Insights. My colleague Aditya will be sharing you the link to review ServiceDesk Plus. And after you submit the review, you can forward your confirmation email from Gartner to hello@servicedeskplus.com, and we'll be very happy to process a $25 Amazon gift card for you. Now, the broad agenda for us today is to go over some of the automations that will help service desks to be more productive, right? So we will start off with one of the first steps in the ticket management lifecycle, namely prioritizing an incoming ticket and applying service level agreements on them. That is defining the time limit within which the tickets have to be resolved or fulfilled. We'll also take a look at business rules and triggers in ServiceDesk Plus. We'll see how they work and how you can have multiple rules in combination to handle certain unique situations. We'll take a look at efficient workload distribution through technician auto-assign, delegation, tech availability chart, and a scheduler. We'll also see how you can be proactive in avoiding incidents by scheduling preventive maintenance activities. We'll also see how crucial stakeholders can be kept in the loop throughout the ticketing lifecycle using notification rules, and how you can ensure an effective resolution using closure rules. And finally, last but not the least, we will be discussing Zia, the AI assistant inside ServiceDesk Plus, and some of our capabilities. So that is our granular agenda for today. And it's time for a quick poll. Here it is. I want to understand how many of you are already using these automations in your organizations, namely business rules, service level agreements, technician auto-assign, notifications and closure rules, and custom actions. Remember, this is a multi-select question, so you'll be able to choose more than one option. So please go ahead and record your responses. We'll keep the poll active for a few seconds. All right, I see that most of you have answered it. So here are the results. Notification rules and closure rules take the top spot, followed by business rules and service level agreements. That's great. So we will be discussing all of these capabilities, including the top one, notification rules and closure rules. But we'll also look in depth at business rules, custom triggers, and that come under custom actions, and technician auto-assign, and how you can leverage them more effectively. So to put it in picture, to put it in context, I'll be using a unique story, a scenario of Zilker, which is a fictional organization that develops enterprise SaaS applications. Now, Zilker is a modern technology company. Of course, it has a diverse workforce comprising of business analysts, software developers, sales personnel, marketing analysts, and also their internal operations personnel. This workforce is dispersed across the globe, and they work in a hybrid manner. Some of them would step inside the offices for some times, and some of them used to work in their homes. Now, despite this change in the way Zilker works, despite the growth in its business, it did not really revisit its rudimentary ticketing tool. right? It started off, its IT department started off with a very simple ticketing solution, which did not really have a lot of scope for automations, and they stuck to it despite changing scenarios. Now, it was actually helpful for them during the initial years, but things have changed quite a bit, right? Due to the lack of automation capabilities, they faced a lot of challenges. The implications are a lot of delay in getting tickets resolved. And this stems from not having an automated classification model inside their ticketing solution, right? So they were not classifying it based on the context. So every time a ticket is received, they had to spend a lot of time just classifying and prioritizing the ticket. This means the ticket takes a lot of time to reach the right talent, the specialist who would be able to resolve it. Added to that complexity is when technicians were absent or on leave, they did not really have a mechanism to track such tickets and assign them to another technician. This disorganized and manual handling of tickets led to a lot of productivity challenges at Zilker. Most of the time, its technicians were involved just in daily firefighting and even their internal operations. So this meant maintenance activities took a backseat. Zilker was not being proactive, and they actually let slip some of the crucial maintenance tasks, which led to a major outage, right? So, and during this major outage also, they did not really provide real-time updates to their stakeholders. Tickets were being closed erratically without any justification. And all in all, this was a very inconsistent IT service management that was happening at Zilker. Now, how can we help Zilker, especially with ServiceDesk Plus? We're gonna uh, take up Zilker's case, and we'll be applying some of our condition-based automations and see how we can best help them handle some unique situations. And the first step is, of course, starting off with triaging, identifying when this ticket should be addressed, prioritizing it, and setting the expectations around both service delivery as well as with incident resolution. So let us dive right into Service Desk Plus. The first step over here is you can go to the admin panel, and under customization, we have help desk. Over here, we have the different ticketing parameters which form a part of that template. Now, what I'm going to do here is to focus on two of the most important variables, namely impact and urgency. Impact merely denotes what is the scale of the incident, whether it is affecting a single user or affects a group of users, or if it affects an entire department or the organization. Urgency denotes how fast a resolution or a fulfillment is required. And finally, we have the priority levels as per Zilker's model. So Zilker operates with these 5 levels of priority, starting with low and ending in critical on the other side of the spectrum. Now, ideally, we'll have to prioritize the incoming tickets in the right order so that Zilker is able to delegate them to the right technicians and the right resolver groups based on the context. Now, we can't, of course, allow end users themselves to decide which priority they need to apply on the ticket, because obviously they're going to choose for the critical or a high priority, right? So we'll be making use of the priority matrix. The priority matrix has two axes, namely impact and urgency. And depending on the values of both of these variables, you can define what priority needs to apply on an incoming ticket. For example, let's say an incoming ticket has a low urgency and it just affects an individual user. Then the priority will be set as low. However, let's say that the impact is affecting the entire organization and the urgency is marked as urgent, then we will apply a critical priority on the incoming request, right? So this is the priority matrix, and we can choose to either allow requesters and technicians to override the priority matrix. So let me quickly show it in action for you. So Here is the end users portal in ServiceDesk Plus. I'm going to report an issue. Let me select hardware. And let's say I'm having a printer problem. Okay, we don't have these fields configured here. Let me quickly select the default request, of course. Now, I'm facing an issue where I'm unable to log into my workstation. So the impact is affecting me as a user, and the urgency is high because it is affecting my work, right? So with that information, I'm clicking on add request. Now, up pops up Zia with its suggestions for category. We'll keep it aside for now. We'll come back to Zia later on. Now, after the ticket is created, you can see that the priority has been automatically applied on the ticket and a due by date, which is the service level agreement, being applied. So how did this happen? Priority is the courtesy of priority matrix. Service level agreements are, again, condition-based automations that we have in ServiceDesk Plus. Now, take a different situation where we have an alert coming in from a monitoring solution. For example, Zilker's enterprise resource planning applications that is hosted goes down. It affects their sales department, their marketing department, and their operations team. How, in this case, would we handle the assignment of the priority? Using the priority matrix wouldn't really work here because you have to configure the impact and urgency fields. So we would need to identify that this is a critical incident and apply the corresponding priority automatically. So the other way to apply the priority, apart from priority matrix, is using a business rule. So you can find business rules under admin panel and under the automation section. So you can create multiple business rules and organize them into different groups. So here is a business rules that I have created for applying the request type. So you can choose to execute the business rule when a request is created, when it is edited, and whether it needs to be executed within operational hours or outside operational hours, or whether it does not matter. And you can choose to enable cascade execution. What do we mean over here? So you have all of these business rules, right? They'll be executed in a sequential manner. So once this business rule gets executed, the next rule will be evaluated, right? So you can choose to execute the next rule or skip the remaining rules both within the group and across all the groups. And when a request arrives, you can choose to apply certain conditions. That's what I've been saying, condition-based automations, right? But you can also choose to apply conditions using custom function where you can pull data from within the ServiceDesk Plus application that is not available out of the box, or you can choose to apply no condition. Remember that when you choose this option, this business rule will be applied to all the incoming requests. Now, in this context, for Zilker, we are evaluating server issues and when they arrive with the request type as empty, right? So server issues are typically of concern to Zilker because they are an enterprise software company, right? And this might adversely affect their customers. So what the IT team has configured here is they are choosing to update the field request type as a major incident, and they are setting the impact and urgency as affecting all the lines of business and urgent respectively. So this is an indirect way of updating the priority. So the impact and urgency fields are factored in and the priority is automatically applied from the matrix. However, if you don't want to do that, you can actually directly apply the priority as critical too, removing these rules. So this is also possible using a business rule. Now, there are a bunch of other capabilities within the business rule, which I will discuss in the next session of our presentation. Now, once you've identified a critical issue or a low priority issue, even the next step is to apply the service level agreement. Why is it crucial? We need to ensure that all the tickets, all the requests that are received by the service desk are resolved in a very timely fashion. Remember, that was one of the major challenges for Zilker. So here, once again, in the admin panel and under automation, we have service level agreements. In ServiceDesk Plus, we can configure service level agreements for incidents, service requests, and change management request. So let me quickly show you a critical priority SLA. Remember, this was the SLA which was applied for that ERP outage alert that was received by Zilker's service desk. Now, if the priority is high or critical, we are defining the response and the resolution mandates. That is, the service desk should respond to this ticket within 15 minutes and it should be resolved within 6 hours. And considering that at Zilker, any high priority or critical priority incident typically means it is a business threat, we have defined that it should be resolved or responded to irrespective of the operational hours, holidays, and weekends. Of course, for low priority SLA, this option can be unchecked. However, I'm enabling it. And now what happens if the ticket is not responded to in time? We have the first level of escalation, wherein the notification is sent to defined technicians or group roles. Group roles are simply individuals who are brought in from across different support groups. Remember, incident response is not just restricted to one support groups. Quite often, it is a coordinated effort, right? So you can create group roles under the admin panel. So let me show you where. We go back to the admin panel, and under users and permissions, we have group roles. As you could see, I have created a group role called IT coordinators, where we have different technicians from across different teams, from application management team, from the server and network support team, and from the IT security team. So these are the different stakeholders who are typically in charge or who typically collaborate together to resolve major incidents. So I have brought them in and notified them of a pending escalation. So I've done it over here, right? And when escalations happen, you can typically choose to be proactive or reactive, that is, escalate before or after the escalation occurs. And along with that, you can choose to perform some remedial actions, be it placing it in a different group or assigning it to a different technician, elevating the priority on the ticket. So if it is a low priority ticket, you can choose to define the priority as medium or even increase the tier, that is whether it's a L1 ticket or it should be handled by an L4 technician. Now that is the single level of escalation for response violations. If, let's say, the resolution itself is in the verge of getting violated, you can configure up to 4 levels of escalations. And over here, as you could see, I've chosen to be proactive, escalating before 4 hours, and the notification is sent to the administrator and Heather Graham. We've also modified the group as IT support. Now, if still the incident request is not yet resolved, then the second level of escalation would send a different notification and place it to the server/network support. The third level of escalation goes to the IT coordinators. So this way you can ensure that these different staged escalations will help you to prevent any kind of SLA violations. Now, I said that in Zilker, there are different groups which coordinate and work together to resolve incident requests, right? Incident and service requests. So how do we ensure that we define an individual time mandate? Because it is entirely possible that one support group may hog all the time, leaving very little time for the incident itself to be resolved. So we have operational level agreement for this situation, where we have defined the OLA time limit for each of these different groups. For example, hardware problems might take 3 hours, server and network support might take 2 hours. IT security does not really have the luxury of longer time limits, so they just have 35 minutes. To see this in action, let us go back to the request, which is Zilker's ERP is down. And under time analysis, you can see how much time has elapsed and how much it is divided into, like the time it's spent under one particular group or one particular technician or even a status. Scrolling down, I can see that all the groups have violated their OLA time mandates, albeit by a different margin. So the OLA time mandates function as a benchmark for you, and it offers you a venue to optimize the way you work. For example, Through internal discussions, you might arrive at some OLA benchmarks, but seeing it in action will help you to have a realistic picture on how much time it takes for a particular type of incident. So you can take corrective action, whether that is the realistic timeline or whether one of these support groups would need to have some kind of an management reject. So that is entirely up to you. And that's how OLA and SLAs work for incident management. Coming back to SLAs, you can also choose to apply an SLA for service requests. So it is a bit different the way in which SLA operates for a service request because you know beforehand the amount of effort it's going to take to deliver a service. So keeping that logic in mind, service request SLAs can be associated to a template. So you choose this template, a particular service offering, the SLA is automatically applied. But now you also have the option to associate a business rule to an SLA. For example, here is the business rule for requesting enterprise SaaS software. And if that is the template that has been selected, you can choose to apply the user onboarding SLA, which we have defined for another purpose. So this way, you can also make use of business rules to apply SLAs conditionally. Now, another capability for service request SLAs is that you can choose to be flexible and allow the user to choose the SLA while creating a request. For example, let me take you back to the end user's portal. Let me take you inside the HR desk and let us create a new request. Let's say it is a new onboarding request. And as you could see over here, I now have the option to select the SLA based on the work model. If the new employee is going to work from home, the service takes 5 days. If it is an employee who's going to work from the office, a resident, it means it takes about 9 days. So this way, depending on the context, you can be flexible by offering your end users the ability to choose an SLA if such an option is available for that service. Coming back to the service request SLAs, the other configurations, which are escalations, response, and resolution time limits, remain the same as with the incident SLA. So let me move on to the change SLA. For changes, Zilker has taken the impact as the parameter. Remember, you can choose to have the change type, risk, the category of the change, or what are the services that are affected. Now, if a particular change at Zilker impacts all the lines of business, then they have provided a resolution time limit. Remember, you can also have multiple conditions and choose whether the incoming change has to meet all the criteria or just one of those criteria. Now, once a resolution resolved within time limit is provided, you can choose to define different levels of escalations. And remember over here, once again, you can choose to be proactive and reactive and escalate to different change roles. So these are the stakeholders who are involved in the change process. And the first level of escalation goes to the change owner. The second level goes 4 hours before the resolution violation to the change manager and the requester. And just 1 hour before, it goes to the change approver. So this way, once again, we've carried over the concept of staged escalations to ensure the successful completion of changes. So that brings us to the end of the first section of today's webinar, where we saw how you can prioritize an incoming request using a priority matrix as well as through a business rule. We also saw how you can establish resolution and response time limits through SLAs and how to apply them based on predefined conditions. And we talked about the varying levels of escalations and how you can allow the requesters to select an SLA of their own choice. Moving on, we are going to help Zilker with the next phase of codifying the workflow. For example, what happens when a major incident hits you? Before ServiceDesk Plus, when using their rudimentary ticketing system, Zilker did not really have an answer because they did not have the option of configuring automations. Everything was manual. So every time a request arrived, they have to perform these manual processes again and again, leading to a very inconsistent repetition of work, right? So we are going to see how you can configure different conditional automations for different situations and how you can group them together into a ticket workflow. And we'll also see how we can ensure that all the different stakeholders receive contextual notifications. So once again, let me take you inside ServiceDesk Plus to the actual request that we received from the monitoring tool. So this has been the story for our webinar today, right? So let me take you through this. For example, we can see that the priority has been applied to it. We can see that the category has been assigned, a group, and the various response and resolution timelines. Now, let me showcase the history of this ticket. One of the first actions, automated actions that was performed was the application of a business rule. It says group assignment and critical application downtime. Let us quickly see what it is. So going back to the admin panel and under business rules. So we had this before I actually showed that particular business rule. A quick refresher, this was a rule that I showcased when we discussed the how we can actually apply a priority based on a business rule, right? So based on certain parameters, we are choosing the impact and urgency fields. Now, these are the different actions wherein you can choose to trigger a custom function, which is basically a script written, low-code script written in Deluge, our own scripting language developed at Zoho, or you can execute scripts like Python scripts, which you might have, or have nested business rules within a broader condition. And there is also the conditional action, right? So let us quickly see how these three work. Here is the critical application downtime group that I have created. Let us go to the first rule. Now, for Zilker, remember that they need context on what kind of incidents happen in their IT environment, and they need to ensure that everything happens instantaneously, prioritization, and getting the ticket to the right specialist. Now, it is also possible that they might receive a high priority incident wherein someone is unable to browse. Now, this might have a lot of implication. If it's just one single employee who's unable to browse, it is a very simple issue, probably localized to their workstation, right? However, if the same issue occurs across different departments to multiple employees, it signals the onset of an outage. So how do we distinguish between these scenarios? We are going to make use of conditional action capability, where I'm evaluating different conditions within a broader global condition. So for tickets or requests which arrive with a template as unable to browse and with a high priority, we're going to see if that particular request has any other linked requests. Because typically when major incidents happen, you would have multiple incident requests linked together to a parent request, right? So we're going to check whether that is false and whether the impact is user specific. That is, it is restricted to one single employee. If yes, this can just be handed off to a tier 2 technician from the IT support group who is competent enough to handle it. However, if the linked request parameter is true, it has multiple requests linked to the parent request, as well as the impact is affecting the organization, then this request can be sent off to the major incident management group and to tier 4 technicians, right? So this is how you can configure granular nested business rules, which take care of very specific scenarios for Zilker. Remember, in its previous situation where Zilker had their manual ticketing system, in this situation, they would have to spend a lot of time trying to understand whether this ticket needs a tier 2 or a tier 4 technician. Now, based on all of these configurations, the assignment and these actions are performed instantaneously once the request is created and some requests are linked to it. So these automations eliminate a lot of the manual processes involved for Zilker, right? And to ensure that these values are applied on the request, you can choose to override the field values with the rule values. Now, coming to the actual group assignment rule that I talked to you about. So once again, we have choose to execute this business rule whenever a request is created and edited across both operational hours and outside operational hours, and we have enabled cascade execution. Now, if the subject contains the words ERP or down, we are choosing to understand more information on this outage. So we have understood that there is some kind of a major incident or an outage happening, but we need to dive a little bit deeper. Now, typically, uh, going back to this monitoring alert, they contain some telemetry information, right, about the events that happen, some of the last telemetry values. So we can configure, in Zilker's case, if the description contains overload, then the server and network support group would take over this particular major incident. So the group is assigned, it is classified under network, and the priority is marked as critical. Or if the description contains security threat or data loss, this might potentially mean that Zilker is facing a cyber attack, which means the IT security group are the right competent specialists to handle this situation. So all the request goes to this group. And once again, the priority is marked as critical. Or let's say it's crash or a power supply or some kind of infrastructure related or hardware related issue, then it goes to the hardware problems group. Or else it reaches the major incident management, which is a cross-functional group of people, right? So you understand how we created this switch case like configuration with multiple conditions and multiple actions configured. This is how you can group different rules together, look at different situations, extract values from the request, and specify the next course of action. So Zilker has completely transformed the way they operate using this automation. Now, you can also configure business rules for service requests, which look typically like what you saw with incident business rules. And additionally, you also now have business rules for notes and notifications. How or where would these rules apply? For example, again, strictly going by Zilker's imaginary scenario, let's say a note is created or edited anytime and we have enabled cascade execution. If the note contains the words known error and it is not added to any of the linked requests, remember, we have a note which says known error and might contain some of the workarounds, right? And typically, let's say that imagine this issue when the VPN is connected, employees cannot access a specific cloud service. So the workaround is to deactivate the VPN and then access it for some time until it is fixed. If that is the information contained in this note, it needs to be copied to all the linked requests which contain the same issue. So what we have done is we have chosen to make it visible to the requester, and I can simply say add to linked request as true, right? So this way, we'll be able to disseminate knowledge automatically based on conditions. Once again, known errors are a typical situation at Zilker, so that's why this rule makes sense for them. So think about some of the situations where you might need to make notes visible to requesters or even mark them as first response. So if you have a procedure wherein your technicians would typically add a note to the request that they've been assigned to, you can choose to mark them as first response automatically, right? So again, think about some of the situations that you're facing and how this automation can help you out. And finally, we have the notification business rule, where I have taken up a specific situation where you have these system notifications and notifications are sent by technicians, right? And whenever they are sent and based on specific conditions where the subject is ERP down and the requester's primary email ID is do not reply at zilker.com. So that is the email ID to which the monitoring tool is mapped. And typically that is how monitoring tools work, right? They send you an alert to the service desk's mailbox and it gets converted into a request, right? Now, what can happen here is these system notifications can actually reach the monitoring tool at this do not reply at zilker.com email ID, which ideally should not happen, right? So we can append an email ID to the to value wherein I can add Ashley Rich to instead to so that she can also receive these notifications and she's part of the major incident management group. Now, there are a bunch of other actions that you can do. Field updates, you can execute custom functions, once again scripts in Deluge, or you can run your own scripts. So these can be used to perform much more granular actions which are not available out of the box, right? So this way you're presented with a lot of extensibility within the Service Desk Plus solution. Now that brings us to the end of business rules. But remember, I also have to send contextual notifications at various points of my request lifecycle, right? Remember, we do have notification rules under automations in the admin panel. Now, these notification rules are triggered at specific intervals, like specific events, I'm sorry, when, let's say, acknowledging the requester, when a new request is received, or when a new request is closed, whenever it's waiting for an update, right? So these are some of the notifications which are pre-configured in ServiceDesk Plus. You can, of course, edit them. And these are available across all the different modules. But let's say that you have a unique situation where you want to send an email and it's not covered under any of these notifications. What do? Well, we have custom triggers over here. So for example, let's say that you receive a critical priority or a high priority request outside of your operational hours. Now, at Zilker, as I told you about, by virtue of their operations, this typically means some kind of system outage. So what happens here is a trigger is configured to be executed when the request is created outside operational hours. And if the priority is either critical or high, then we trigger a major incident notification to CEO, CIO, the entire C-suite, and the IT coordinators. So this way we can ensure that we can add contextual information into a specific notification and send it off to some of my critical stakeholders. So that way custom triggers would help me. And it's not just that, you can also choose to, once again, execute custom functions, script, or even a webhook. So say that you have a task for which you can configure custom triggers. So let's say, and tasks typically are the functions that you would need to perform to deliver a service or resolve an incident, right? So what happens here is, let's say that the task type is implementation and you add multiple conditions based on the task's title, right? And it is about adding an end user to a particular SaaS service. What am I going to do? You can choose to execute a webhook, which will perform that action for you on that third-party app, provided that it supports that webhook. So this way, custom triggers can be very powerful for your organization, depending on the use case that you want to solve, right? And remember that the difference between business rules and custom triggers is that you can send notifications, trigger webhooks, and use custom triggers across different modules in ServiceDesk Plus, right up to approvals. So that brings us to a partial completion of this section. There's one more scenario that I want to discuss. What will happen when, let's say that technicians do not respond to an incoming request? We remember we set up first response mandated time limits in our SLAs, right? What if they don't even respond to requests? We need to enforce some kind of checks and balances, or at least send periodic reminders, right? And that was the case at Zilker. So what we helped them with was request timer actions. So with request timer actions, they were able to escalate it when there was no response. Remember, we had just one escalation level in service level agreement, but I really wanted to happen on my own timelines and on a workflow that I have configured for my organization. Then we can use request timer actions, wherein it applies for all the templates. And the timer starts when these conditions are met. That is, the status is in progress and the responded date is empty, which means the first response has not occurred yet. So we provide about 30 minutes from the created time. And then for every 10 minutes, for about 2 cycles, for 2 repetitions, we will be sending a notification, right? So we have sent a notification to the group in charge if the group is not empty about an escalation, or it is sent to the site in charge. So we have escalated it not only to a specific group role, but also based on whether a group has been configured in the first place or not. So these are some of the granular functions that are available in ServiceDesk Plus. And it's not just restricted to escalating in a timely manner. The actions are actually quite holistic. For example, let's say that you are a technician and you're awaiting some information from the requester. So you place the ticket on hold and you wait for 1 day to receive a response. You don't get it. Then for the next 2 days, you send reminders for the requester's inputs, right? And if you still don't receive it, you go ahead and cancel the request and notify the cancellation for no response, right? So this is how flexible it is. Same goes for approval reminders. You want to send approvals, reminders to those approvers who are configured in the template. So here is a CRM request template and it's pending for approval. So we await until 1 day before the due by date and send 4 notifications spaced at 3 hours, right, to the approver. And if not, Zilker has a policy of canceling the request because the approval has not yet been received. So that is also possible with request timer actions. So now I have just given some of the scenarios that are possible, but these are not restricted to just these. Depending on your unique situation, your standard operating procedures, you can configure a lot more, right? So that brings us to the end of this section. And let's move on to see how we can help Zilker enforce an efficient workload distribution, how we can allocate the tickets in the most efficient manner possible, and so that technicians do not really feel the burden of an increasing ticket load. So let me once again take you back inside the ServiceDesk Plus application. And in the admin panel under automation, we have technician auto assign. So technician auto assign is a model wherein it follows 2 different algorithms. It is either round robin or load balancing. For round robin, let's say that you have about 3 technicians in an IT team. The first ticket goes to the first technician, the second one to the second technician, and the third one goes to the third technician. Now the fourth ticket goes back to the first technician. Or otherwise, you can also choose load balancing, wherein the workload of the technician is taken into consideration. That is the number of open requests that they have at that point in time. So you can choose to execute this when a request is created, apply it for all the requests, or just to those requests which remain unassigned after the conditional automations. You can also choose to assign it to only online technician, which can be marked over here. Now, apart from that, you can also choose to exclude certain technicians from the ambit of tech auto assign. Why is it necessary? Because some of these technicians may be involved in the implementation of your changes. Some of them might be involved, in firefighting major incidents. So you don't really want them to be burdened by the daily ticket load. So you can exclude them by name over here, or based on conditions, like which group they belong to, or depending on the priority of the request or the levels on which they operate, right? So these are, again, some of the policies that Zilker has set up. Now, apart from that, one of the major problems that Zilker had, if you remember, is that there were technicians who were going on leave and the requests that they are responsible for remain unattended. In ServiceDesk Plus, you can configure backup technicians for those technicians who go on leave. When you do that, you can go to the Home tab over here and choose My Schedule. So this is the calendar that you have. And let's say that on the second Monday of September, the administrator is on a casual leave. What an amazing time to be on leave, right? When just you get a lot of these new tickets. Now, what happens here is the casual leave is depicted by this color coding, and the green head icon depicts that a backup technician has already been configured. So it has not been configured for September, and I'm going to do just that. So I can choose to move the request to the unassigned state, or I can choose to assign a technician to take up those requests so that I ensure that they do not remain in the unattended state. Or I can also choose to not take any action on the requests. Now we can also choose to view the tech availability chart, which provides the broader picture on when the technicians are not available and whether a backup technician has been configured. The green dot indicates whether a technician is logged in or not. So this way, you're able to handle the absence of technicians in a very holistic manner and in a centralized manner, right? So going back, moving on, how do we improve communication with stakeholders and how do we ensure that a resolution is effective in Zilker? So we have to ensure that the tickets are being closed after due verification, and that's what we are going to look at. So we already looked at notification rules. I'm not going to go into that again, but what we have instead are closure rules. Closure rules are applicable for requests, problems, changes, releases, and tasks. And what you do here is you can define some of these fields as mandatory before the request can be closed. That is, all the associated tasks should be completed, a resolution should be filled in, and the associated checklist should be verified. So it looks something like this. I choose to, let's say, close this particular request. It should throw up an error. So let me say it's closed. As you can see, it's asking me to fill up the mandatory fields. So this way you can enforce certain standards in the way that tickets are closed, verifying their authenticity. You can confirm the user acknowledgement. You can automate the whole request closing process. For example, when all the associated tasks are completed, you can move them to the close status, or they can only be marked as completed if the dependent requests are completed. So again, it is based on every organization's unique policies. Now, if not for all of them, you can also configure an automated close work or automation where the requests are closed after 2 days, following them moving to the resolved status. In this mode, an email is sent to the requester and they will be receiving a link through which they can manually close the request. If not, within 2 days, the request is automatically closed. Ideally, if approval is denied, you can also close request then and there. This overrules other configurations, of course, and you can choose the request closure code, commands, etc. So that is all about closure rules for requests, and it is very similar to the different modules, and it carries contextual fields from those specific modules, right? So let me quickly move on to the next automation that's available, which is how do we maintain the long-term stability through proactive maintenance? Remember, Zilker really could not concentrate on this particular uh, frontier because they were very busy firefighting their normal ticket workload, right? So with ServiceDesk Plus, they were able to configure periodic maintenance activities, which is available under maintenance, as you can see over here. And you can create a new maintenance schedule. You can apply a template. For example, you can leverage both incident and service request templates and schedule them to be created periodically so that your IT team stays on track with regular maintenance activities. So you choose any of these uh, templates and those values would be superimposed on this form. And once done, you can choose to schedule it. So let me quickly show you something that I've already created, such as the health check of DB service. As you could see, we can choose to schedule it on a specific date. and choose to run it monthly, and on which specific day, which is the third Sunday. Very comfortable time for me because these maintenance activities would not impact Zilka's regular or their apps and other customer services that they offer, right? So this way you can choose to run these periodic maintenance activities. And sometimes if let's say there's a major change that is going to happen or a critical project, you can choose to suspend these preventive maintenance activities, right? So let me quickly show you one which has already been created. As you can see, uh, checking the health of fire servers has been created by the system automatically from the request maintenance. So that's how preventive maintenance tasks work. And last but not the least, we go to Zia, the conversational AI assistant in ServiceDesk Plus, right? So imagine the track which we have just covered. We started off with the basic fundamentals of ITSM prioritization, uh, setting the SLA time limits, getting the request to the right resolver groups, right? And now Zilker has progressively taken care of these fundamental issues that they had, and now they're looking to the future, actually, where they want to leverage a conversational assistant. And this would help them to augment their service desk, and we're going to see how it works. Once again, back in the admin panel and under Zia, we have the Zia configurations and the Zia bot. Now, the Zia configurations is a machine learning model where you can have Zia predict or validate the reopening of requests, such as categories, which, if you would remember, happened once when I tried to create a request and Zia popped up straight away recommending a certain category. That is from its category prediction algorithm. It can also suggest templates and determine the intent behind an email response for an approval notification. So let us quickly cycle through that. Quite often we have requesters, very earnest requesters actually replying to automated closure notifications, right? And this might tend to reopen the request because, hey, when you receive an email from the requester, you just create a ticket, right? But that's not ideally what should happen. So we can provide different phrases under which request needs to be reopened, or it can be still remain closed, right? So let's say a workaround is not what we are looking for, or I have more issues to discuss as a reply, then the request will be reopened. Or let's say it's all good and the issue is resolved, thanks a lot, then the closure status is retained. So you can add different phrases as the data set, and Zia will train on them and will improve its prediction, right? Now, the same applies for the requester's approval actions. If it is all right, amazing, carry on, go ahead with it, then the action is mapped to approve. And if not, let's say budget overboard, it exceeds the budget, cease this process, stop it, and other equivalent phrases, then the action applied is a rejection. So based on these data sets, Zia is able to train on and will be able to accurately predict what is the intent behind the end user's response. Apart from that, you have the category prediction and the template prediction. Remember that for both of these prediction actions, you would need at least 500 requests in your ServiceDesk Plus instance. So Zia trains exclusively on your dataset, and so you need to have at a minimum of about 500 requests for Zia to actually have a prediction enabled, right? For Zia to actually start predicting the values, right? Now, the other avatar of Zia is the Zia bot, where different actions are available out of the box. So one of this includes adding a note to a request. So this is how it looks like. You ask Zia for more assistant, and then she provides you with a set of options. You execute an operation, which is adding a note, and you can choose which request ID this note needs to go into, what is the content, and then there's the success or failure. So this is how this particular operation flows out. And let me quickly show you that in action. So we have the Zia chatbot over here. So you can choose to raise a ticket, say IT workstation issues probably, and click on add request. So the request gets created. So you can have different commands being executed through the Zia chatbot. Remember, Zia can be your uh, agent who's available 24/7. So that really helps Silker's cause as they grow larger and larger. So we have arrived at the end of this session. So we saw how Zia can be accessed and how there are predefined custom actions like raising a request, checking a task, and how Zia would be able to predict data automatically for various ticketing operations. So a quick recap, we started off with the basics of a request and how it's handled across its life. Starting with classifications to imposing deadlines based on the context of the request, triggering various actions using business rules, custom triggers, and timer actions. We used algorithms such as load balancing and round robin algorithms to manage the workload of technicians. We configured backup technicians to ensure that no ticket is left unattended. We helped Zilker to turn a bit more proactive and start scheduling automated preventive maintenance activities. And we saw how communication issues were straightened out through notification rules as well as through custom triggers. And finally, we had a look at Zia and its capabilities. So I hope this session was valuable to you. We did dive in depth into a lot of capabilities, and remember, all of these capabilities, right? Be it business rules or custom triggers, timer actions, there is a lot of correlation between them, right? So the priority can be determined by the business rule. The group can be determined by the business rule, and depending on these actions, the SLA is applied, and depending on whether the technician meets the response time limit, you can send repeated reminders, notifications, and ultimately even cancel the request or change the technician using custom triggers. So all of these are interrelated automations, which when configured together offers a very powerful way for you to handle different situations, just like what Zilker did. So go ahead and try out these in your instances for specific scenarios. If you need help, please contact us at hello@servicedeskplus.com, and we'd be very happy to help you out. Thanks a lot, folks, for being a very patient audience. Do leave your feedback on how you like this session and what more do you want from the ServiceDesk Plus Masterclass. As always, you can drop an email to me, siddharth.gauthaman@zocorp.com. I'll post that over here, or alternatively to hello@servicedeskplus.com. Thank you, everyone, and have a very nice day.